What's in the box, Pika? What's in the box? No, it's the book. All right. Hey there. It's time once again for the golden age of DC Comics, 365 days, where I take this beloved hardcover coffee table book given to me about 2 decades ago by one of my best friends. This has been surfing my coffee table ever since. It's been a constant source of comic book shop style conversations, the kind I wish to recreate with you here today. Thank you so very much for tuning in. What goes better with a coffee table book at the coffee table talk, pulling up a chair to the coffee table, bring a cup of your own. Slancha, let me wet my whistle. We're going to start talking. I'm using this book for its intended purpose. This is a 365 days book. I'm going to open up to today's date, which is October the 7th. We're going to look at some comic book art of an antediluvian age. We're going to read the blurb, and then we're going to talk about comic books. And we're going to talk about comic books every day for the rest of the year. The golden age of DC Comics runs between 1938 and 1955. The silver age between 1956 and 1970. The bronze age, I'm Bronze Age baby myself, between 1970 and 1985. And the copper age begins in 1985. I get these definitions and standards from the glossary of the most recent Overstreet comic book price guide. Yes, I feel that is a great place to have standards to come from. I also will suggest these 2 books, Understanding Comics, The Invisible Art by Scott Mcleod, and How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way by Stan Lee and John Buscema. We are often on the outside looking in to a comic book when we open one. And these books here give us the perspective of being on the inside, looking out through the creative process, through storytelling, through sequential art, through art style. This is really, really valuable for anyone that loves comics as much as we do. Indeed. This book here is a 2004 Abrams publication. It's been written and curated by Les Daniels, Chip Kidd, and Geoff Spear. You can find links to all of these books in the description to the Amazon pages. I'm giving this book a second chance. You could give a used book a second chance too. You can buy used copies of any of these, and you too could give an old book a second life. And I'm so happy to be using this book. I'm using it for entertainment purposes and to have these conversations, to have some fun. I love talking about comic books. I'm so happy that you have tuned in today. You are the most important part of this show. Continuing this daily conversation. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm glad I'm here for it too. Seriously, I don't know if that sounds cheesy or not, but heck, you know what I mean? I'm glad we're all here and to be sharing these moments together. Let's get to it. I'm going to crack this book open, and I hope that you are clobbering your problems and not being clobbered by them. Over and out. Yeah, just my business cards that I use as my bookmarkers because they're very practical there. Oh, cool. Really cool art. Yeah. This is from the cover of Detective Comics number 65, July of 1942. So basically, America has just entered World War II, which we did in December of 1941. Yes, and this is about crossovers. We're going to look at this art. It's Batman and Robin and the Boy Commandos. Robin and I want to welcome you, Boy Commandos, to Detective Comics. And then you have the bowler hat wearing leader of the Boy Commandos. His name is Brooklyn. We're coming back to him. Gee, thanks, Batman. We're glad to be in such good company. And then Robin says, you fellows are a swell bunch of hard-hitting characters, and whoo, you have terrific adventures. But here we go. We would call that a backdoor pilot today. You have like an episode of your favorite show, and then it just introduces random characters who are tangentially have relationships with their main characters, and they're only there for one episode. and it's meant to, see, let's see the audience's interest in this new dynamic set of characters and their adventures that we have lined up for them. Let's read this one. But this is okay. This is from the cover of Detective Comics 65, July 42. That we just said that, but it's pencils by Jack the King Kirby and Fred Ray, with inks by Joe Simon and Jerry Robinson. So this in itself, art-wise, is a major mashup of mad talent. Crossovers in which one character showed up in another story were fairly rare in the early days of DC. Heroes ordinarily met only when they became members of clubs, like the Justice Society of America or the Seven Soldiers of Victory. The exception came on covers, especially when they were used for promotional purposes. Here, a promising new feature is giving prominent placement on a cover, but Batman is also on hand to keep his fans happy. What's even more unusual is that the Boy Commandos are drawn by their original creators, Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, while the dynamic duo are depicted by two of their top artists, Fred Ray and Jerry Robinson. The Kid Commandos were a hit and even got their own comic book, but from this point on, Batman no longer shared the cover spot with him ever again. So yeah, these are the Boy Commandos. We're not gonna get into all the Boy Commandos themselves. They were an international gang. I think there was a Dutch kid, a British kid, a French kid, and the American kid. And I think they got more and more diverse as the years went on too. But yeah, the kid in the bowler hat here, that's Brooklyn, and he's from Brooklyn, New York, and he's got that accent, and the probably that whole Jimmy Cagney thing as a kid. James Cagney was one of the biggest actors of that day, of the 30s and 40s, specifically playing a smart-talking urban city slicker, usually either a gangster or a private detective or a Fed. Either or, he's got that, the swagger and the tough guy thing and the accent there. You come to associate with having an urban type of individual who knows how to, solve his differences with scraped knuckles. That kind of thing, But this is an interesting example of, okay, so Jack Kirby, 30 years later, almost 30 years later after this publication, returns to DC Comics. There's this huge thing between 1970 and 1972. Jack Kirby had free range on a lot of DC titles that he wrote and he drew, and he brought in the new gods, Darkseid, Desaad, Granny Goodness, Mr. Miracle, the Forever People, and also Dan Terrible Turpin. And Dan Turpin, he first appeared in the New Gods #5, and ultimately he is the Lieutenant Inspector of the Metropolis Special Crimes Unit. So he's part of the Metropolis Police. So he's in Superman's realm. He's in the Superman family in a way. And so Detective Dan Turpin first appeared in November of 1971 in New Gods #5. But this is what Kirby did. He gave Dan Turpin his backstory. As 30 years ago, he was a kid in World War II. And he was a leader of the Boy Commandos. And you knew him as Brooklyn. So he's got the same bowler hat and the same attitude and the same, gruff, heart of gold kind of thing. And, but Kirby, Jack the King Kirby, was able to retcon his own character, or it's a really nice dovetailing of these characters. So he made it that Dan the Terrible Turpin started off his crime fighting career as as the leader of the Boy Commandos, and tied in those two titles from two different ages, and made a bridge from the Golden Age to the nascent Bronze Age. Isn't that wonderful? I love talking about comic books. And also, one thing I want to talk about Dan Turpin. I'm a big fan of Batman, the animated series, of the Bruce Timm and Paul Dini vision. There was a brothers show to Batman, the animated series. It was called Superman, the animated series. And it was wonderful because you had Dana Delaney as Lois Lane. You had Tim Daly from Wings as Clark and Superman, and he was later replaced by George Newcomb in the Justice League, and it was a really easy transition because he really got to keep that same voice. You know, it's really easy to mistake the two. And Clancy Brown was Lex Luthor. Michael Ironside was Darkseid. Yes, and okay. So Darkseid is the main villain by the end of the show, which its finale was in the year 2000. And in the finale, the episode, there's Darkseid. He's brainwashed Kal-El. So Superman is now a minion of Darkseid, and they've come to Metropolis to take over. So the entire world is standing up to Darkseid. And there's Dan the Terrible Turpin, as part of the Metropolis Police, defending Metropolis, and Superman breaks his conditioning, comes back to being good, and so they're about to save the day, and Darkseid finishes his conquest and is defeated. But this last act was to shoot his Omega beams at Dan Turpin and kills him in a cartoon, in an American cartoon. Now, death is fraught in anime, seriously, but to see an American cartoon. I hadn't seen a major hero in a cartoon get killed like that probably since Robotech, when Roy Fokker died. I've seen Dan Turpin get killed like that. And Dan Turpin visually and voice-wise too. He was played by Joseph Bologna, a really good character actor, but with that kind of like that Brooklynese thing to it as well. But visually, Dan Turpin was based on Jack the King Kirby and how he looked, so it was a nice reference to his creator. But I was shocked, literally shocked, to see Darkseid kill Dan Turpin. Yeah, Darkseid and Dan Turpin go way back because they're both creations of Jack the King Kirby. And I'm going to finish this off with Final Crisis. This was one of the crises of the early 2000s. Written by Grant Morrison and drawn by J.G. Jones. This is really good art for most of it, J.G. Jones. But we open up with Dan Turpin, and he's investigating the murder of one of the New Gods. He finds the assassinated body of Orion, the New God, and by doing so, by being touched by Orion here, he gets infected with this New God called Darkseid. So by the end of the story, Dan Turpin slowly loses his humanity and literally becomes the human host for the mind parasite known as Darkseid. And by the end, Batman takes his one shot at Darkseid to wound him and to free and save Dan Turpin from his fate of being linked to Darkseid forever. And Batman was shot with the Omega beams and ended up unstuck in time like Billy Pilgrim. And that's a story unto its own too. But thank you so very much. We've been talking about comic books, and we're going to talk about comic books every day for the rest of the year. So tune in tomorrow, 3 p.m. U.S. Eastern, and we'll find out who we're talking about when we turn the page tomorrow. Please like and subscribe. I would love to earn your subscription. We make daily content here. We talk about comic books. We talk about purpose and spirituality and gratitude. We talk about cooking. And we're also talking about horror movies all month long. I'm doing the 31 days of Halloween with my physical media collection, and this is just, a stack of my horror. There are plenty more in the living room. And so tune in for that. There's going to be the playlist at the end of the show. It's going to pop up about now. And you can tune into that, leave a comment there, like and subscribe for that. Put on those notifications. Please, I would love to be part of your YouTube day. Thank you. That's all we got for today. God bless. Namaste. Good luck, and we will see you tomorrow in those funny pages. All right. Cheers. Thanks. Bye-bye.